Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the second public hearing on an examination of the current levels of childhood obesity and the state's interventions to promote a healthy lifestyle among children in Trinidad and Tobago. We'd like to welcome the viewing and listening audience to this, the 29th meeting of the Joint Select Committee on Social Services and Public Administration. These proceedings are being broadcast live on ParlView and, of course, are on our social media platforms. We would like at this time to invite members of this committee to introduce themselves. I am Paul Richards, the chairman for the committee.
Good morning to all. Esmond Ford, vice chairman of this committee.
Good morning all. I'm Glenda Jennings-Smith, and I'm a member of this committee.
Good morning, Alison West, member.
Thank you, members, and there are other members of the committee who are either absent or unavoidably detained. We thank you for being here. Of course, we have representatives from the Ministry of Sport and Youth Affairs, the Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries, the Diabetes Association of Trinidad and Tobago, and the National Parent Teachers Association, NPTA of Trinidad and Tobago. And of course, once again, the meeting is the second hearing pursuant to its examination, the committee's examination of the current level of childhood obesity and the state's interventions to promote healthy lifestyles among our nation's children. The inquiry has three main objectives. One, to examine the trends in obesity and associated illnesses amongst the student-child population. Two, to assess the services and facilities available to counteract and or alleviate childhood obesity. And three, to examine the effectiveness of the school nutrition program in the reduction of childhood obesity in Trinidad and Tobago. Of course, the stakeholder groups before us, we have present from the Ministry of Sport and Youth Affairs, the Acting Permanent Secretary, Mr. Farouk Hussein. Good morning, Mr. Hussein. Thank you for joining us. The Chief Technical Officer, Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries, Dr. Simone Titus. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Titus. President of the Diabetes Association of Trinidad and Tobago, Mr. Andrew Danu. Thank you for being with us. And also Mrs. Rafina, did I pronounce it right? Rafina, sorry. Ali Budu Singh, President of the National Parent Teachers Association, the NPTA. We also have other persons from the various ministries who at this time I will invite to introduce themselves, and those who I just introduced can also do so officially for the record. Thank you for joining us. Let's start with Mr. Farouk, Permanent Secretary Acting in the Ministry of Sport and Youth Affairs.
Good morning, Chair and members. My name is Farouk Hussein. I am the Acting Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Sport and Youth Affairs.
Good morning to Chair and members of the committee. I'm Erland Kent, Director Youth Affairs at the Ministry of Sport and Youth Affairs.
Good morning, Chair and members. My name is Gabriel McTeer, Assistant Director, Physical Education and Sport, Ministry of Sport and Youth Affairs.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning to the committee and the chair. My name is Andrew Danu. I'm the president of the Diabetes Association of Trinidad and Tobago.
Good morning, Chair and members of the committee and stakeholders. I am Mrs. Rafina Ali Budu Singh, National President of the NPTA.
Good morning, all. I'm Simone Titus, Chief Technical Officer of the Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Nirmala Devi Singh Prasad. I'm the Chief Executive Officer, NAMDEVCO.
And those who have joined us in the second row.
Good morning, Chairman, members of the committee, stakeholders, and media. My name is Ms. Carrie-Ann Mejias, Second Vice President of the National Parents Teachers Association. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Marcia London McCullough, Acting Deputy Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Sport and Youth Affairs.
Good morning, Chair and members. I am Denise Arno, Acting Deputy Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Sport and Youth Affairs.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Asha Samaru. I'm the first Vice President of the Diabetes Association of Trinidad and Tobago.
Thank you all for joining us, taking time to be with us today. And we'd also like to welcome members of the media and those in our audience on radio and television and online. We'd like to remind you, both committee members and officials and stakeholders, to direct your questions, concerns, and comments through me, the chair. We'd also like to remind officials to activate your microphones when you're about to make a contribution, when you are acknowledged by the chair, and please turn it off when you've concluded your contribution. And as we start now, let me just indicate this is the second part of the inquiry. We met a couple of weeks ago with the officials of the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Education, who gave us some quite interesting commentary on the startling levels of childhood obesity in Trinidad and Tobago, which are not going in the right direction, to put it mildly. And that is because of a number of factors in Trinidad and Tobago. Of course, diet being high on the agenda, inactivity, the issues of inactivity related to school curricula or curriculum, and I think the policy or practice of I think it's standard 3 or form 3, sorry, where it's no longer mandatory for students to participate in PE or extracurricular, what is described as extracurricular activity, and a tendency for younger people in Trinidad and Tobago to be more and more inactive, opting for more and more video games and more inside activity, and also a general philosophy in Trinidad and Tobago that, and this is a discussion the committee had before we came on here, that academics in the classical sense takes precedence after a particular stage in life to sport and healthy activity or activities that promote health and reduction in non-communicable diseases, etc. And I hope some of our discussions will revolve around that this morning, and how we can come up with interventions and policies that will facilitate not only healthier nutritional choices in schools, but in homes and generally, because of what is unfortunately available as we describe as junk food that are not contributing to healthy lifestyles and metabolisms, but also having a different kind of philosophy in Trinidad and Tobago toward activities, sporting activities, outdoor activities, not in a sense of everyone being a Brian Lara or Dwight York, but just maintaining some level of activity through primary and secondary school and university and in our adult lives, so that it contributes to our health and reduces our national health bill and increases our quality of life into adulthood and into our elderly life, etc. So I'd just like to open the commentary from the Ministry of Sport, then the Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries, and the Diabetes Association, and the National Parent Teachers Association, in the context of what we hope to achieve today in our discussions related to the obesity levels in Trinidad and Tobago. Let's start with Mr. Farouk Hussein, Acting Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Sport and Youth Affairs.
Chair, permit me to express my appreciation to the Joint Select Committee on Social Services and Public Administration for convening this dialogue on childhood obesity and for extending an invitation to our ministry to join in this discussion. The Ministry of Sport and Youth Affairs is responsible for the monitoring, oversight, and facilitation of the development of youth affairs, sport, and recreation in Trinidad and Tobago. The ministry collaborates with stakeholders towards ensuring the successful pursuit of youth development, active lifestyle, and sporting excellence. Our services span the areas of policy, institutional structures, and projects, inclusive of the development and upgrade of sport and youth infrastructure. At the ministry, we believe that sport and active recreation can make a significant contribution towards improving the physical activity levels of our population. In this slide, the ministry commits itself to support, encourage, and promote sport and active lifestyle throughout Trinidad and Tobago. Chair, the Ministry looks forward to a productive meeting and sharing our information and ideas on this important issue being addressed by the committee. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hussain. If we could have Dr. Titus next, Chief Technical Officer, Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries.
Thank you, Chair. I want to say a pleasant good morning to all again and indicate that the Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries is pleased to participate in this joint select committee on this very interesting topic, and I would like to say it created a lot of dialogue within the ministry. And my colleague and I will make all efforts to clarify any questions that may arise in this regard. Thank you.
We'd also like some contributions without questions eliciting. Thank you so much, Dr. Titus. Mr. Danu from the Diabetes Association of Trinidad and Tobago.
Good morning again, everyone. Thank you on behalf of the Diabetes Association, and thank you for including NGOs and civil society in these discussions. The Diabetes Association's primary aim is to improve the lives of persons living with diabetes through education, advocacy, and research. However, we also invested in initiatives which are directed at decreasing the amount of cases of diabetes. This puts our focus on the primary cause of diabetes, which is obesity. Obesity reduction tactics have been at the center of our prevention initiatives, as we know that excess body fat is one of the primary determinants of diabetes development. The Diabetes Association of Trinidad and Tobago has noticed a shift towards younger and younger persons being diagnosed with diabetes. Previously, recommendations of persons at the age of 45 being screened no longer is acceptable, as we're now seeing persons under the age of 30 being diagnosed with diabetes type 2. We have seen that far more children in schools show indicators of prediabetes, of impaired glucose tolerance. Besides being overweight, which may now describe about 50% of our population in all schools collectively, other indicators of diabetes risks have now been more apparent in children. One of these manifestations of hyperinsulinemia is acanthosis nigricans, or darkening of the skin behind the neck in particular. The Diabetes Association of Trinidad and Tobago believes that significant changes in the landscape in schools as it relates to a healthy environment should be adopted sooner rather than later. We are now seeing children developing diabetes and other lifestyle-based non-communicable diseases before their parents in some cases. It's a notion that's accepted by many health professionals that for the first time in human history, we're now seeing children who may die before their parents from MCDs. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Mrs. Ali Budu Singh from the National Parent Teachers Association.
Good morning again, Mr. Chairman, and other members of the committee, stakeholders. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, and other members of the committee, stakeholders. It is indeed a pleasure for us to be here this morning as we are addressing this important topic of obesity and what we can do to rectify this problem with our children as early as possible. Health and wellness of our children are important in ensuring that they have the capacity to learn well and obtain their maximum potential. Good parenting provides the conditions in which a child can realize his or her full potential. Therefore, the well-being and welfare of our children should be our focus. To this end, we can safely say prevention should be our first practice rather than intervention. However, childhood obesity has grown exponentially in our nation. In fact, it has, as I heard, it has been 400% increase from 2009 and has become a societal issue. And the factors leading to this condition can be traced in a large part to the lack of exercise and poor diet. It is a parent's responsibility to provide proper nutrition for their children. And the NPTA, as a responsible organization, seeks to offer this kind of empowerment to our membership by establishing partnerships with the relevant stakeholders, in this case, the Ministry of Health. These programs are concomitant with our objectives as outlined in our Constitution. 1, to promote the welfare of children and young persons at home, school, church, and in the community, and 2, to develop among educators, parents, and the general public such united efforts as will secure for every child the highest advantages in physical, mental, social, cultural, and spiritual education. Let me quote Frederick Douglass, who stated that it is easier to build strong children than to repair broken men. Realizing the significance of nutrition, Ministry of Health conducted sensitization workshops in our PTA regions on non-sugary beverages and obesity, and we in turn communicated this information to our PTA units in our respective schools. Health educators from the Ministry of Health were invited to many individual units. They compared the sugar content of the beverages our children consumed and explained the detrimental effects on our children's health, namely NCDs. Many children sitting in our schools exhibit symptoms of diabetes, hypertension, and of course, obesity. These workshops occurred between March to April 2017, and the NPTA culminated this series of workshops with a health fair held on the Arima Promenade in June 2017. We chose this venue because the research showed that Arima had the highest registered cases of child obesity. The most recent statistics presented to us on obesity showed that childhood obesity increased from 2.4% in 1999 to 13% in 2009, and in 2017, 55%, ages 5 to 18 years. This phenomenon is frightening, and this situation should be of serious concern for us parents. Due to inadequate attendance to our PTA meetings, the dissemination of this vital information is not widespread. At present, this new NPTA executive has been working on the ground to increase our membership and forging partnerships with significant stakeholders in the education system. Efforts are made to inform parents through pamphlets, brochures, etc. However, physical presence affords meaningful discussion, collaboration, and sharing of ideas together, and so much benefit can be derived in changing lifestyles and various meal choices. A great idea was suggested at one of our meetings, and notably to prepare recipes cost-effective for parents for circulation. You see, our parents do not realize their influence and importance in their children's lives. School feeding plays a significant role in nourishing our children. However, these children are selected on socio-economic criteria, not one considering health, and there is no assessment instrument to measure the benefits of the meal. RDA allowance supplied 25% in breakfast and 33% in lunch. NDSCL provides 25% of our children with breakfast and 33% with lunch. Mr. Chair, we are ready and willing to work along with our parents, because parent education is key to this success. Our theme for this year, Educate Parents, Empower the Community. We are doing the groundwork for more parent participation and engagement, and hopefully we will make a difference. We are now partnering with the Ministry of Health in their TTT moves and Healthy Me initiatives.
I'm going to ask you to put a pause. I know you have a lot of information.
Yes.
And we thank you for the information, because
I'm finished.
a lot of, oh, that was the end.
Yeah, I just have one sentence.
Go ahead.
So a whole generation is at risk through obesity. Thank you for this opportunity, and I hope we'll have some success from this deliberation.
We will, based on your start there. You've hit the ground running. How long have you been at this post now?
Since November 2017.
Well, you obviously have hit the ground running, and we appreciate the statistics and the information you brought already, and what seems to be a very thorough examination of the paradigm that we have before us. You indicated 2.4 to 13% to 55% between 2009 to 2017?
Yeah, yes.
Wow, that's, Alice, you're better at math than me.
It's about 4 times, 400%.
400% increase in prevalence. Wow. That is striking. Let me start with the Ministry of Youth Affairs. How much collaboration is presently done with the Ministry of Education in terms of the insertion or maintenance of sporting activities at primary and particularly secondary level schools, given the fact that it's only mandatory up to Form 3, and we see a sharp fall-off in participation of sporting activity, not necessarily competitively, just participation after that Form 3 benchmark, because there's a tendency toward focusing by parents and teachers in some instances on attaining grades, and nothing wrong with that, doing well, but at the expense of physical activity.
The Ministry of Sport and Youth Affairs provide technical assistance, and also we have a coaching program. I would ask Mr. McTeer to give us some details in terms of these two activities.
And not meaning to be rude in any way, I know we're going to get a lot of technical information in terms of what the policies are and what the programs are. We have the documentation. What we want to know is actually what is happening, what the participation levels are like. We have all the information about what the policies are, what the frameworks are. We really want the public to get a sense of what is happening so that they make decisions about their children's participation in lives that will positively impact them, particularly where this, what I would describe as a health concern is. Okay? So thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Good morning again, Chair and members. The Ministry of Sport and Youth Affairs and the Ministry of Education, we do collaborate with respect to the development of sporting programs, as the Permanent Secretary would have mentioned. However, where physical education is concerned, that falls under the strict responsibility of the Ministry of Education, and how they implement their physical education programs stays with the curriculum division. We liaise with the curriculum division in terms of the provision of coaches based on what needs are and what it is we can provide. However, when it comes to physical education, that definitely remains with the Ministry of Education.
But when you say the provision of coaches, how many coaches would have been provided to primary and secondary schools? And is it only coaches that you supply in terms of the competencies necessary for maybe teachers engaging in information about physical activity and how important it is in their lives outside of a curriculum setting?
The coaching programs, we have over the years had up to 15 coaches at different schools throughout the various districts.
No, 15 coaches at how many schools?
That would have been, I don't have the statistics at this particular point in time.
So this is 15 primary and secondary schools across the board?
Yeah, it would have been primary and secondary schools. There would have been at least one interaction with the coach for that particular time period that the coaches would have been on contract.
I have a fair understanding of how many primary and secondary schools we have in Trinidad and Tobago. So when I hear there are 15 coaches being spread for contact hours, it doesn't give me a lot of hope. And I'm not blaming you, I'm just saying that's what exists. So then we start to get a sense of what the challenges are. Go ahead, please.
Also, but of course, each school should have, well, with the Ministry of Education, physical education teachers, which would provide a general level of physical activity for children in the school, at school age and during the school curriculum. Of course, what we would provide with respect to coaches would be more supplemental. It's really in terms of being able to provide two things. One, some total participation opportunity for sport itself, not just physical education, but also to provide a means by which it is we can support our national governing bodies with respect to talent identification for the development of national athletes in the future. So in terms of general physical activity participation levels, that should really take place at school level with a mandatory physical education program across all age groups, all classes. Okay, it should not, as would have been mentioned, probably stop at a particular age or form, but it really should last throughout the school career of the student, to be able to ensure that you have a maximum possibility of participation in physical activity.
No, I'm glad you mentioned the curriculum aspect of it, but do you get a sense from your interactions in the Ministry of Sport and Youth Affairs that Trinidad and Tobago, because you mentioned the identification of talent, which suggests that there's a dichotomy here. Not everyone wants to be an athlete. Not everyone wants to be Brian Lara Dwight across Latapy, Kishwan Walcott, but everyone should be, as a philosophy, a national philosophy, understand the importance of physical activity from a young age, from the time you can walk, all the way through your adult life into the older years in your life. Do you think we have that national ethos towards sport, or is sport just seen as competitive?
I don't have any empirical data to support that, however.
Sport/physical activity.
Yeah, I think that there needs to be more emphasis on the implementation of physical education at school level. Physical education is where you have that ability to instruct a child as to how it is you go about treating your body, managing your body, and allowing the individual to develop certain habits that would last throughout the rest of their lives. So that's where physical education becomes very, very important, because it's an actual subject, it's a curriculum, there are stages for that. Where sport is concerned, from the Ministry of Sport and Youth Affairs side, what we would offer, as I mentioned before, would be opportunities for total participation. Not all the students who would participate in our coaching programs are doing so just for the sake of being able to become an athlete. But they would participate for the sake of. However, from the pool of those persons participating, you will find one or two or more who would be able to graduate to other levels of sport participation.
I'm floating with Member West and then Member Jennings.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To the Ministry of Sport and Youth Affairs, I get the sense that you see your role in terms of promoting physical activity within the schools as being a facilitative one, so that if and when the ministry wants support in terms of coaches and so on, you will supply them to the extent that you can. I am wondering whether, as the ministry in charge of sport and youth affairs, whether you think you need to be more proactive in trying to promote physical activity and sport among the youth, and therefore get more involved in working with the ministry to devise curricula around that and to help them ensure that they have the equipment and other services that they need to promote it.
In terms of how the Ministry of Education is structured and how physical education is implemented via policy, it falls strictly and very strictly under the Ministry of Education. The Ministry of Sport we are not able to necessarily just do sport programs or create or implement sports programs in schools without that approval from the Ministry of Education. They have their structures to take care of that, and as a result, we take a more supportive and facilitatory role in that regard. Another, if I may, another element where sport participation is possible would be through our national governing bodies. All right, for sport, they would liaise with the Ministry of Education as well in terms of providing opportunities for students to participate in sport with, of course, the dual purpose of being able to find talent for their own elite and high-performance purposes.
It is evident that what we're doing now is not working, because as the president of the NPTA would have indicated, we are moving in the wrong direction in terms of increase in non-communicable diseases. And therefore, what I'm suggesting to you is that we may need to change the way we do what we do. And since my understanding of your role is to promote sport and youth affairs throughout Trinidad and Tobago, I am suggesting that you may want to give consideration to playing a more active role. I know you can't intervene in the education system, but playing a more active role in seeking to influence what is happening there.
Noted. Thank you very much.
I want to first ask the president of the Diabetic Association. Now, you gave us a figure of 50% of the population in all schools overweight, and then we heard from the president of the parent teachers body hinted about 57%.
Yeah.
As the president, do you have more specific information as to where that 50% of the population lies?
Okay.
In terms of geographical areas.
Okay, firstly, in terms of the geography of where that percentage would have lied, that information is not really published. The information that we would have had was from the Global School Health Survey, which was presented 2007, 2011, 2017. I think what the president of the NPTA would have alluded to, I think something was mixed up there in her presentation, whereby 2011 she would have mentioned obesity rates, while 2017 would have mentioned total obesity and overweight rates. So that's why she get 400% increase, but it's not that bad. If it was, then we would be in a terrible position.
The reason why I'm asking you, and I'll stop you, because she referred particularly to the area of REMA.
Yeah.
And I wanted some further clarification from you being the chairman of the Diabetics Association of Trinidad and Tobago. So hence the reason why I'm asking you to tell me, in your collection of data and information, did you give any consideration to determining where in Trinidad and Tobago we have the highest amount of that problem?
So again, we have not, or we do not have the capacity to collect that data. That data was collected by the Ministry of Health. And the Ministry of Health would have presented through the Global School Health Survey that statistic. Okay. So really and truly, in 2007, the total obesity and overweight rate in children in primary schools and secondary schools would have been 1 in 3. From the 2017 data, we now have a 1 in 2. So half our children are either overweight or obese. So it's really like a 45% increase, not a 400% increase.
And you know, I'll bring you to a point. Now, when we talk about tackling health problems or public health problems, the first thing you try to do is to determine the hotspot areas. It's like crime. You first determine where you need to have specific interventions. So you need to target who, where, and how you will engage it. So I'll ask the next question to and I'll just rest with you a bit to come back to you. If you could seek to find some clarification on this issue. But now I will now go to the Ministry of Sport and Youth Affairs. In our questions that we submitted to you, we had asked you to tell us about what you're doing about implementing these programs, because the PS quite clearly outlined that the functions of the Ministry of Sport, when we talk about childhood obesity, was monitoring and developing and engaging youth development for active lifestyle. So that you gave us 4 programs, the Ministry of Sport. You had community-based sport development program, youth health caravan, school education caravan education, adolescent intervention program. But I want to find out what method did you, or what selection process you engaged, right, to select the areas to have these programs done. Bearing in mind we don't have the statistics as to where, the who, what method did you use to select the places you did your intervention programs?
The programs would have...
So I'll make it easier. How are schools or communities selected to benefit from these programs?
Okay. At the time that these programs, or over the period of time, the last 3 years, Mr. Kent would have been our Director of Youth Affairs, and I would ask him to give some details.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the process, the Ministry of Education would have published a list of at-risk schools across the education districts, and these were at risk for various reasons. All right, and
could you please, could you keep it to obesity? I think that's what we are talking about this morning. So if you're talking about at risk, how did you come up with that information? Because I asked the question before. I tried to get clarification. Did you get that information from the Ministry of Health?
Ministry of Education, as you're saying, through your message.
How did you determine the at-risk schools?
Well, that is what I was explaining. The Ministry of Education would have published a list of at-risk schools, and they categorize at-risk based on a wide spectrum, including healthy lifestyles as well.
If I could just interject, and I understand Member Jennings' inquiry. She's asking what is the methodology used to target these resources, and if you're using a matrix of at-risk as supplied by the Education Ministry, the prerequisites for at-risk may have several different variables, and the health aspect may have a lower loading than other components. So is it that is an overall approach you're taking to at-risk, or is it because you are the Ministry of Sport and Youth Affairs? So I'm understanding the line of questioning in that context as to, is it that you looked at the loadings for obesity or health-related issues as opposed to other components which may form the gamut of the spectrum at risk as supplied by the ministry? What's the methodology? What's the target? What's the matrix you use for determining eventually what areas that were targeted?
Well, what we did, we used from the list. We would select schools, and our programs are generic. All right, so it is not specific to childhood obesity, but it falls within that whole area of healthy lifestyle. All right, promoting healthy lifestyle among young people and children. So we select from this list and we rotate in all the educational districts.
To cut a long story short, you just choose some schools and decide to intervene. There's no scientific method. That's fine to say that.
Yes, based on the Ministry of Education's published list of at-risk schools.
So in completion, I want to ask you, because I noticed that you had a lot of community programs. Did you find it necessary to consult or to work along with the National PTA Association in engaging these programs?
Well, through the PTAs at the individual schools that would have been selected, the parent body within that school would have also participated on like planning committees for these activities.
So are you telling us that you worked along with the president of the National Parent Teachers Association? No?
No, the president of the PTA in the particular school.
So you worked with the persons in the particular school? Okay,
yes.
Last question. What was the level of participation from children and adolescents and the feedback from the parents from each of these programs that you had? In particular, the parents.
Well, the data that I have has not been disaggregated into the categories of participants, but we have general data in terms of the youth health caravans. Over the past 3 years, we would have reached out to approximately 3,000 persons. The school eduvans, 7,770, and the adolescent intervention program, which is a post-SEA program, we would have reached out approximately 900 persons.
So great. So if we had ended up in 2017 with an increase of over 400%, clearly you would have reached 7,000 students, as you said a while ago. But your advocacy program, because I looked at what you had submitted, you talk about an advocacy program, which is a program geared to engaging persons to engage a healthier lifestyle. And going forward, as the Ministry of Sport and Youth Affairs, and I dare say it's a ministry that I see working, diligently to engage young people, and I've seen movements in that area, and I want to compliment the Ministry of Sport and Youth Affairs at the same time. And yes, this is indeed a new area that you are challenged with this morning by our questioning. So in going forward, because of the dynamism of your ministry, I want to ask you, what are the plans you have set in train to go forward, seeing that what would have been done in the past year, you didn't get the kind of success that you would have, required or desired. What is your plan in going forward in terms of this program? Because we have before us some startling revelation of the increase in the number of obese children in our society.
In looking at our programs and reviewing our programs, we realized that it was not a specific objective of the program to address the issue of childhood obesity. It was, in effect, a benefit of the program. In reviewing our programs now, we are looking at putting a greater focus on childhood obesity and trying to make it one of the objectives of the program. Yeah.
Member Ford.
Yeah. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Mr. P.S. Acting, you mentioned in your opening statement that part of your mandate is basically to encourage sport and active lifestyle and participation, well, generally, right? But then we are zeroing it down to schools, primary and secondary, because I think this is part of the topic that we're on today. But I'm hearing from Mr. McTair, in terms of that mandate that you all have, there seems to be not a proactive approach in dealing with ensuring that we'll have, the active lifestyle among the school population, as the case may be. Whereby Mr. McTair is saying that they basically depend on information from the Ministry of Education in order to determine how much coaches they may need, how much equipment they may need, as the case may be. And I'm thinking from the Ministry of Sports point of view that you all should be more proactive in setting up guidelines and plans to the Ministry of Education, even though they may have their particular curriculum. What I'm thinking is that based on your mandate, you all should be putting programs in place in order to enhance the whole curriculum activities at the particular ministry. Have any approaches been done along those lines? Not just with regards to talking about supplying coaches and equipment. I'm talking about programs, because you all have a ready-made market in place at the various schools, whether primary schools, whether secondary schools, whether in particular zones, east, west, north, south. What programs are there in order to showcase, healthy lifestyles, protein programs, cricket, football, tennis, swimming? Give us some sort of trend.
All right. Well, through the national governing bodies for sport, we do encourage the planning and implementation of sporting programs in schools. Also, the Ministry of Sport is, within this fiscal year, moving towards the rehiring of coaches and the rehiring of sport development officers for that purpose of being able to work with work with students at school level, as well as work within the sport development officers, work within communities for development of participation programs for school-aged children, as well as for young adults and, well, the community in general.
Thank you. If I could just interject, Vice Chair. I know you're at a bit of a disadvantage because your purview is not necessarily specifically to deal with issues of obesity, and that's a side effect of the success of what your ministry is mandated to do. But what I'm getting from the members is that maybe there needs to be a more active role in terms of your matrices for success with your programs, including collaborations with the Ministry of Health, etc., to factor that into your success or your measurement matrix for your program, because I don't get a sense that there is a documented measurement approach to the success of many of these programs. We put resources into them as a state, and we're seeing less and less participation. And there doesn't seem to be an analysis of why the participation rates are dropping and what we can do in the future to mitigate that and to change the trend or the directions to what we would like in terms of increased participation rates, not only in schools, which is a natural catchment, but certainly at the community level. Vice Chair.
It is stated in your documentation, that's on page 7, right, the Inter-American Development Bank agreement with regards to the health services support program, right, where a loan has been granted. Could you care to share the figure of that loan? What's the amount of that loan?
The details of the figure I don't have, because the loan was already granted to the Ministry of Health. What the Ministry of Sport has been doing since mid-2018 is working along with the Ministry of Health with regard to identifying youth facilities and sport facilities where the equipment that would be purchased by the loan could be placed according to where our facilities are located, and also working with the Ministry of Health in terms of the evaluation of bids, well, which is the stage that the process is at now, the evaluation of bids for the purchase of such equipment. We also would have identified what types of equipment would be required within the sport facilities and youth facilities.
Right. So these will be sporting and youth facilities. Schools will be catered in this particular aspect?
No.
Right, no schools. With regards to the Healthy Youth TT initiative, right, that you all are planning to implement, right, how will that work? How will that help us in what we are discussing today? How will it assist us with obesity, healthier lifestyles, and so on? What's the plan of that? What's the purpose? Give us a little hint on what's the plan on that.
While there has not been a concrete plan put in place just yet, in terms of our liaisons with the Ministry of Health, the discussions that have been held are going towards the use of these gyms or facilities where equipment would be placed by the communities, members of the communities, especially, of course, by young people. Of course, the usage of these facilities would be done at, if not no cost, at a very low cost to the participant. We will have trainers placed at these facilities as well, certified instructors placed at these facilities as well, to be able to assist the young persons who will be utilizing the facility to maximize the use of such for the safe participation in exercise at the various locations.
All right, Mr. Mactier, I want to be very specific now. Up in the east, there is an indoor racket center, right, where lawn tennis, table tennis, badminton are played. Has that facility been utilized to the fullest potential as we speak?
The National Racket Sport Center, the facility is, the programs that are put on at the facility would be operated by or implemented by the national governing bodies for those relevant sports. So, in other words, coaching programs for their national youth teams into their high performance and elite teams and athletes would take place at those facilities. There are other facilities where badminton is played at a total participation level. The National Badminton Association at a point in time would have had programs in schools utilizing the indoor facilities at those schools to be able to encourage youth participation in badminton. The Table Tennis Association, through their club system in communities, also would encourage the participation of table tennis throughout Trinidad and Tobago. And in terms of tennis, there are a number of tennis facilities around the country where tennis is offered as sport for the participation of various communities and persons who can do so. The Racket Sports Center, however, is more so a training hub for national teams, youth teams, as well as senior teams. Well, individuals and teams, because they're really individuals.
But Mr. Max here, right? Why I asked the particular question, because there are the caption area. That caption area have a lot of schools, both secondary and primary, along that area of the East-West corridor. And you know, from information coming to me, is that, you know what I mean, they are not being able to utilize the facility for whatever purpose in order to get the training, and as the case may be, and scheduling and programming and so on. I know we may be probably a little off topic, but the point is that we have the facilities, right? But I'm thinking that they are not utilized and being maximized for what, you know, the purpose of what it has been, you know, spilled out to. So it's something I think that you need to look into.
We will have to have a discussion.
Because I had discussions with the Badminton Association as well as the Lawn Tennis Association, and there seems to be some little gray areas along the lines there.
We'll have to have a discussion with the national governing bodies.
Before I go to Member Jennings-Smith, let me just apologize to Dr. Titus and Mrs. Debbie Singh Prasad. We haven't left you out. Oh yeah, I know you've been sitting here, and I apologize. We're going to come to you with a lot of questions in a short while, okay? So just hold on, Member Jennings-Smith.
Yeah, I'll continue, and I will eliminate the Ministry of Education as I move on, and I will focus clearly on the Ministry of Sport and Youth Affairs. And we had asked you a question to outline initiatives and activities, right, from your ministries to promote healthy and active lifestyle aimed at combating obesity among children and adolescents. And in your response, by your very admission, right, you admitted that in fiscal 2019, you will continue the programs such as the community-based sport development program, which I alluded to earlier, the community health caravan, adolescent intervention program. If you look on page 9, you would see your answer, so I wouldn't have to read the entire answer that you provided us. And you did say that these programs are geared towards promoting healthy and active lifestyles, right? And you did say again that it will not only educate the youth of the danger and effects of obesity, but also promote a strong platform for combating lifestyle diseases. And I will revert to my former question to Mr. Andrew Danu, because here you are utilizing government's funding, engaging in a program, and I actually asked you the question prior to, and gave you an open end to tell me what you intend to do in the future, knowing fully well that you had given an answer too. And you have us with a lot of details here of how you intend to continue. But what we are not seeing is, you know, an evidence-based approach to doing what you have to do. Because clearly, you speak also about youth facilities. And where are those youth facilities, right? What is the criteria you're using to select the communities, and who are you targeting, right? So is there a collaboration between you and the Ministry of Sport, Health, and as well as the president of the Diabetic Association of Trinidad and Tobago, who I feel need to do much more research to provide you with that information, that when you make a decision to do something, utilizing taxpayers' money, government funding, that you are really on board to make a difference and not just to give us a lot of narrative here for an answer. I need to get some clarification on this particular issue from the Ministry of Sport, and I need to get some more involvement from Mr. Andrew Danu on statistical data, because you are the persons that we would all look to provide us with that kind of information along with the Ministry of Health. We need to have programs that is specific to our needs, especially in a time when we have limited fundings. So I need to get a specific answer from you, Ministry of Sport. And bearing in mind, you know what you wrote here? And we saw that we didn't have any success because we still continue to see a rise in obesity. And you are saying to us here that you are going to continue with these programs. So what different are you going to do?
To you, Mr. Chair, the programs saying have not been evaluated to the extent that we would have liked, because we do have a monitoring and evaluation unit at the ministry with 2 members of staff. I know that efforts are in place as we speak to recruit additional staff to assist us with the monitoring and evaluation of the programs, to produce that kind of data that will put us in a better position to implement in a more effective way. Now, what was put forward here in terms of the future was ways in which additional things that we can put in to the programs that we think were lacking from our point of view in terms of sustainability as it relates to promoting healthy lifestyle among youth and children in the community. And one of the major ingredients there is for the establishment of the community-based health groups, all right, that will continue. After we go in and we disseminate the information and we collaborate with the Ministry of Health and do the testing and that sort of thing, we thought that there was a need to have some sustained activity in the community. And because we have our youth facilities at 7 locations: Basilon Street, California, Laventille, Los Bajo, Malik, and St. James. And we may promote one of these health caravans at one of these facilities, but there are neighboring communities from which participants will come. And as a result of that, we thought that establishing this community health group to follow up, and they work with them in terms of developing additional programs and projects that they can implement to sustain based on the initial intervention that we would have made.
One of my concerns is not the intention of the ministry, but the data and information upon which you're making decisions and the follow-up data that you're gleaning from it to decide, well, is that working? Why is it working? Why is it not working? What data are we using to decide we're going to X, Y, Z community? What's the strategic rollout plan? Why those areas for strategic rollout? And what are the components or the factors that are playing into making those decisions, which I think is one of the inquiries that Member Jennings-Smith is trying to get. What is driving the decision? And just as an aside, we know that Mr. Danu is president of the Diabetes Association as an NGO, so we appreciate your presence here, but I think also the concern is that maybe the suggestion, I should say, maybe is that there be more collaboration with the ministry itself so that the data that is being disseminated to the public is more on stream, so the public is not confused between data coming from Diabetes Association and data coming from NPTA and data coming from the Ministry of Health. And there is a collaborative effort in terms of understanding we're all working toward the same, alleviating the same issue. I want to jump to the Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries, and thank you for your patience, Dr. Titus. As the Chief Technical Officer, give us a sense of the fruit that the MOU between the Agriculture Ministry, the Ministry of Health, to more effectively streamline the efforts between most ministries is bearing fruit. And also, why is there no longer a rep from the Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries on the Board of Management for the school nutrition program, given the obvious synergies that we would imagine should be happening between the Ministry of Agriculture and the produce in Trinidad and Tobago, the healthy produce, and its possible impact on the school feeding program, and using that school cohort as an option for local producers and healthier nutrition options. And I might add local.
Chair, you've asked several questions in one. Can you please take it step by step? Can you repeat? So
first one is about the collaboration between the Ministry of Agriculture and Education to more effectively streamline the efforts. both ministries in this regard?
Sorry, so your question is, what can be done to do?
What is being done in terms of your collaboration between the Ministry of Education and your line ministry?
Well, frankly speaking, really and truly, there's no, as we indicated, there's no memorandum of understanding. There's very little that is taking place now to strengthen the collaboration between the two ministries. And so that is something that we've indicated we need to work on. As I indicated before, this being invited to this Joint Select Committee caused a discussion because it highlighted a lot of things that the Ministry of Agriculture, it brought it to the fore that there are certain things that we just really may have fallen away, and it's something that we really need to work on. So that's where we are now.
Presently, the school nutrition program has little or no collaboration between the Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries in terms of the possible synergies and the accessing of local produce to create those meals for the nation's children.
I'll ask, okay, with that question, I'll ask my colleague to respond, please.
Good morning again. Okay, so previously, based on the menus that are being served on the school nutrition program, there would be some level of collaboration with NAMDEFCO being responsible for the operations of the Macoya wholesale market to make available a list of our certified farmers and the volumes that they potentially bring to the market to members of the program. So there would be some level of collaboration between our field officers and officers at the school nutrition program to identify what's at the wholesale market available for sale, and as it relates to the menu options at the program.
Next question does your collaboration extend to even advising the Ministry of Education and the school nutrition program of the possible availability of healthier local choices? Even if it's not presently used, advising them, well, Pomerock better than imported apple. Local Julie mango is better than, in the interest of healthier choices, lower food import bill, etc.
So if I may, there were previous programs in the past where we would not have advised, where we would have collaborated to provide certain menu items as substitutes for items on the menu. One in particular being using green papaya as a substitute, a percentage substitute for Irish potatoes in some of the menus and meals prepared for the school children. So that was one initiative in the past. NAMDEFCO would have been instrumental in providing the item as a ready-to-cook item to the caterers on the program. That would have been initiated through collaboration with the school nutrition program and NAMDEFCO. NAMDEFCO being the marketing arm of the Ministry of Agriculture, and we're also responsible for development of the markets. That sort of collaboration took place specifically from the packing house facility in Piaco, which is set up as a facility to facilitate export and local agro-processors. Therefore, we were able to successfully collaborate on that initiative. Other initiatives included the provision of ready-to-cook items such as pumpkin, dashing bush, okras, and from time to time, other small items of local origin. So from a collaborative point of view and from the availability of nutritious, and might I add at this point, Chair, safe, because the produce that would be sourced and recommended by NAMDEFCO would have been sourced from our certified and monitored farms. And our farms are monitored against good agricultural practices guidelines. The farms are not certified GAP, but they are guided by good agricultural practices. And so NAMDEFCO monitors on a monthly basis a cadre of farmers where we can recommend, based on their practices, a certain safe food availability for consumption.
Does that suggest that there is a cadre of producers in Trinidad and Tobago that may not be meeting those benchmark safety guidelines? And how is that factored into the national produce matrix? Because if we're asking the Ministry of Education / the Food Nutrition Program to be an integral part in our nutrition for our nation's children, there must be a sense of, well, there are benchmark practices nationally to support a drive to using local produce.
So our farm certification and monitoring program is purely voluntary. It's not mandatory. So presently we have approximately 2,300 farmers on our program. Those are the farmers we would monitor on a monthly basis. For those who have chosen not to join us, we cannot identify exactly what's happening on the farms. So unless we have a presence on the farms, we can't say at this point in time.
But you can say X and Y farms are certified and approved by the ministry, and A and B farms are not certified. You can do that because I think it's in the national interest for people to know what farms the ministry is approving as a health concern and a safety concern. Would you agree?
That is true. We definitely can say which farms are certified by the Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries.
Finally, before I go to Member West and then Member Ford, is there a program by the Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries that seeks to, either in collaboration with the Education Ministry and the Food Nutrition Program, to identify, one, the local healthier options and the preparation, and because nutrition for particularly children is a tricky issue, as we all know. It's not just about give them and they'll eat it, because they become weaned on foreign stuff, and in many cases unhealthy foreign stuff, and their tastes have been socialized in that way. So if we want to change the trends to healthier, and in addition to local options, there needs to be an education program and a public awareness program about, one, these are the local options available that are safe. Two, this is the preparation that will appeal to younger demographics. Is that part of what your mandate or approach is?
It is not a part of our mandate at present. However, from time to time we're asked to make presentations at various schools and other institutions on where your food comes from, so that children are better able to understand where their food comes from and to make healthier food choices. So also that type of information is shared on our media platforms about know your food. We do have a brochure that we share with many of our stakeholders on it's called Know What You Eat. And so that we identify foods by their various colors, and in an attempt to educate you on the nutrient benefits of various foods according to colors, because we understand that colors appeal to people and they appeal to the person who's eating the meal. So in a bit to be able to tell you, what you should be eating and what you should not be eating, that's the only programs that we engage in training and educating the public, school children also, about what you should eat.
Are those brochures digitally available?
They are on our website.
Thank you, Chair. Just to follow up on that, as I would have asked the Ministry of Sport and Youth Affairs, do you see it as your role to be more proactive in promoting these programs that either existed and no longer exist in the robust manner, or that you have available but that you don't promote? Because I get the sense that you have the knowledge, certainly, and you should have the interest, but there is no active promotion of these things. So substitution of foreign foods with local foods, educating the school children, the school feeding facility to focus more on the healthy lifestyles and local foods. Do you see it as your role to be more proactive in that area?
Yes, we should be more proactive. I'd like to, at this point, also indicate that NAMDEVCO manages and operates 9 farmers market facilities throughout the length and breadth of our country, from Debe to Port of Spain and in between. These farmers markets, the premise of it is based on the availability of local foods to the persons who reside in and around the area of the farmers markets. And having said that, while it provides an economic benefit to the farmers who sell their produce at the market, it also provides the benefit of, one, reducing post-harvest losses where foods have to be transported from the farms far distances, so that appreciate that nutritive benefits are gained and maintained in the food from the time the farmer harvests it to the time the consumer takes it home and probably prepares it. Also, too, it provides the advantage of people being educated about where their foods come from. So through our farmers market initiative, we are currently at 9 farmers markets throughout the island. We are continuing to look at bringing more nutritious foods of local origin to the tables of our consumers. So that's our little role that we're doing right now in promoting healthy lifestyles and the use of more local foods and reducing the incidence of non-communicable diseases.
I applaud the NAMDEFCO approach to introduce the farmers markets and so on, and they're very useful facilities. I still believe, and I don't get the sense that you have accepted, that the Ministry of Agriculture needs to just get more proactive. So, for example, you should have a program in place where you are collaborating with the Ministry of Education as to what their meal programs are, what facilities they use to secure their produce, how do they substitute all their foreign imports with local produce, and so on.
So I take your point. We will definitely try to be more proactive in the future. And, whenever their menus are planned, there was a bit of collaboration before, but of course, there are many challenges in planning production with menu planning. So while we recognize that there are challenges, it's something that we will in the future be re-establishing, working with the school feeding program when they're planning their menus, and to work collaboratively with our local farmers to have more local, nutritious, and safe foods on their menus.
One question to both Ministry of Agriculture and Ministry of Sport. Do you use social media at all to promote your programs in terms of local substitute foods, and also in terms of getting people moving? Because the focus of the young people is on social media, and I don't get the sense that we use it sufficiently to promote these things. So do you?
So we do. We hosted a series of video productions from NAMDEFCO maybe about 2 years ago, where we would have one-on-one talks with our food technologists, promoting certain food groups and how to best maintain the nutritive value of such foods during menu preparations. So yes, we do, and then we continuously promote our through our Facebook page the farmers markets and the wider range of menu applications that some of the basic foods that we have come into our markets. Based on their varietal characteristics, they lend themselves to various menu applications. So in that way, we encourage cooks at home to be more creative based on the variety of fruits and vegetables that are available at the farmers markets and the wholesale markets by extension.
Member.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. Again, from your documentation provided by the Ministry of Agriculture, the CEO of NAMDEFCO, in item 2, again, the school nutrition program do purchase from local markets. However, while the exact numbers are unavailable, right, the caterers do shop at these particular markets. Right, now you mentioned earlier in your submission the collaborative approach, you spoke about the guided approach and monitoring. But I'm thinking, even in following up with Member West, that there should be a compulsory approach and also a mandatory approach with dealing with these particular contractors and at the school nutrition program. Because again, we are operating in silos, as the chairman mentioned, right? Because these contractors under the school nutrition program are contracted to the Ministry of Education. The Ministry of Agriculture is also an arm of the government. We have local produce, and we are saying that, listen, we would like you all to use these local produce. Not if you want to. Can it be mandatory? Can it be compulsory that we mandate that these local producers, these local contractors purchase our local agricultural supplies?
Through you, Chair, I think that may be a possibility if it's part of their contract. So if they contracted the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Education in their contract could say, okay, a certain percentage of the ingredients must be of local origin.
No, but I think this is where you come in, right? In terms of being the Chief Technical Officer, in that, has a paper been provided? Is it documented? Has it been forwarded to your PS in order to get it to the PS of Ministry of Education? Have those things been documented?
Through you, Chair, no.
Right. And then we could go on further. The Ministry of Agriculture does not have direct relationships with the local contractors for the school nutrition program. Why? Care to answer? Meat, poultry, fish. Where are those things purchased? Are they purchasing the frozen stuff that we're saying that may not be ideal for consumption? Where are they getting it from? Those are statistics that you all have to get, Madam Chief Technical Officer, Madam CEO from NAMDEFCO, in order to ensure that our children are eating healthy. Care to comment?
So, yes, those statistics I'm sure can be made available to us, and there is room for a lot more collaboration. I do agree with you in terms of some function that stipulates a certain percentage of local production should be on the menus of the school feeding program.
Can I interject? One of the trends that's evolving in many of these JSCs is the siloed approach in problems that are so common, or challenges that are so common, and a lack of proactivity, as Member West is suggesting, between agencies that have so much to gain from working more closely together, because you are, in some instances, duplicating, you are contradicting each other's efforts, you are not taking advantage of obvious synergies in the interest of effectively solving issues. And I know you are just the representatives here today, so we apologize. And we did say Ministry of Agriculture, we're coming to you soon. But there seems to be an abject lack of will or structure or facility for effective collaboration between agencies that have common objectives, as we are seeing. And many times, it takes coming before these joint select committees to almost force these collaborations, which to me is quite counterproductive. The Ministry of Sport, Member West asked a question about the use of social media. Is that something that you've done effectively in terms of getting your information out about the availability of programs in communities in particular, etc.?
Yes, we use social media. In terms of the details, Mr. Maktia will provide.
Yes, social media is used to promote any programs that we would have. What also is going to be done in the future is that moves are being made to hire persons in the communications unit that will specifically address the gaps with regards to any more innovative use of social media. And I think that's it. I think it's a case where while we do use it, it can be done better. So we have identified gaps, and persons are going to be hired that will specifically address those gaps.
I think all the agencies need to stop printing stuff and send it stuff through social media. Let me bring in Mrs. Ali Boudou Singh before I go to Member Jennings Smith and Member West. And I loved your presentation earlier on when you started. Do you see yourself in the new iteration of the National Parent Teachers Association as a conduit for facilitation of joining these many seemingly disparate groups in the interest of what the mandates are, one, nationally for our nation's children in schools, regarding, in this instance, we're talking about obesity and health, but certainly other issues such as behavioral issues, etc. And how do you see that moving forward, given your limited resources, but your obvious connections to many of these agencies that should be really working more closely together collaboratively?
We have always partnered with any agency that can help us and help our children to improve, whether it's behavioral change or academic, whatever.
Let me suggest you speak from the point where you took up tenure, because there may be some discrepancy in that statement and what may have occurred before you.
Okay. So what we have been doing in moving around, we have realized that we have many problems in our schools. We have schools closing down. We have schools where students just go to school for 2 days a week and so on. And we have been dialoguing with principals to start solution centers in these schools so that we can make up for the loss of teaching time, especially in the secondary schools. We are also expanding our after-school study center program, which we partner with Student Support Services in the Ministry of Education.
Right, and all that is great, but can we focus it on the obesity issue in this instance, please?
Okay, on the obesity issue, what I observe is that we have many recreational facilities in our communities. I see them lit up late, but there's no one in these recreational facilities. And I think that this is where Ministry of Community Development and clubs and schools and other groups in these areas can come together and use these facilities. It doesn't have to have, I've listened to Ministry of Sports and Youth Affairs, and I'm getting the sense that we feel that obesity and sports has to be, skill training. But it could just be freestyle. So you use these spaces there, and on afternoons, or even in the school's playground, you don't close the school after 3 o'clock. But you use these schools for different reasons. And one could be recreational facilities where all your stakeholders come, just have an aerobic session, have the children coming together, their social skills will also be improved. You have people, whenever you have people coming together, you have better village life, better communal life. And I see that as an avenue of getting the people on the ground involved in physical activity. And this message could be transmitted through the schools, through village councils, because we do have village councils, and the various clubs, even cricket season. I'm not seeing anybody playing cricket. And I think a reason too is a safety issue. People do not feel safe to be in these open spaces. And
can I ask a related question? How strong is the NPTA now in your assessment since your tenure? Because I know it was very strong 15, 20 years ago, and it had waned in numbers and participation, and it can be such a strong instrument for the alleviation of many of the issues facing our school-age children in Trinidad. How strong is the NPTA now in terms of participation? And so there are 50 or so non-affiliated PTA groups in Trinidad and Tobago. What is your collaboration like with them between the denominational schools and non-denominational schools?
So what we have been doing in recent time, we have been going to different education districts We are making linkages with the National Principals Association, both in primary and secondary schools. We are dialoguing with the school supervisors in each district so that we'll have more say in the schools, we'll have more collaboration, we'll have more buy-in from the parents because, you know, parents' voice is a strong voice. They have to realize the power they have to make changes, to bring about changes. And this is what we are doing because most of our PTAs in the schools are not affiliated to us. So we have to market ourselves. So we have been going, we have been working the ground. We realize that supervisors and principals are important stakeholders to influence. And of course, we have a good relationship with the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Health.
I want to have a double question, both for Ministry of Agriculture and the President of the NPTA. First, I want to ask the Ministry of Agriculture, you alluded to the fact that you have had no new programs or initiative in the ministry which deal with promoting healthy lifestyles and dietary habits in Trinidad of children. And I want to let us focus that this inquiry really focuses onto the current level of childhood obesity and state's intervention to promote healthy lifestyle among children. There is a common saying, to whom much is given, much is expected. And all of us in this room here, we have been given certain responsibilities. And when we sit and we give answers to questions, it suggests how we accept our responsibilities. But to the common man on the street and to the people who look at these programs, they have a lot of expectations from all of us. And I want to ask the question, so okay, there has been no new initiative in the ministry with respect to the programs. But I want to ask both the president, because you visit schools, tell me, have you seen any more additional schools engaging in these 4-H programs? And if you see, do you see empty spaces looking as though it's a little backyard, garbage bag, or something like that? Or do you see things happening like plants growing and children being very active? What do you see?
Okay. Just last week, I was speaking to a PTA about 4-H clubs and getting the school involved in the 4-H club. But what we realize, especially in our primary schools where the foundation is laid, you find that if a subject is not testable, it's hardly done. So agricultural science isn't testable. So you find that energies are not put into that. If in the past, I know there used to be environmental competitions, so you find that schools will place a lot of emphasis on how the grounds look, and they have various vegetables planted and so on, because you had different categories. But I would say that 4-H as an extracurricular activity is not being done as it used to. Agricultural science is not promoted as far as we see going from school to school. What I have observed also is that you find the schools in the villages are more engaged in teaching children to plant things, to nurture and grow vegetables and so on. But in the town schools, no, I haven't seen that.
Are you looking at San Grande as a town?
No, it's a suburban.
Well, right, because I don't see it happening there either. So I want to kind of cut on time and ask Ministry of Agriculture, given that this program was introduced in 1960, when was the syllabus last reviewed to ensure that the topic related to obesity are adequately addressed?
I'm sorry, I can't give that information. I don't have it now. I'll try to provide it.
So could I take it that you admitted earlier to this joint select meeting being a wake-up call for maybe your ministry or your section, and maybe you would consider looking at this particular, because a lot of people speak to me in my constituency about the 4-H club teachers tell me about how interested students were with the 4-H club and how you could give them an appreciation of what they can grow and what were the benefits of what they can grow. And this is about engaging children to start thinking along a particular course. I remember sometime, you know, public figures spoke about eating of fast foods and, you know, not utilizing the benefits of these homegrown foods and stuff like that. So you have young minds and you have the areas assigned to the schools. And I know that you used to have some agricultural officers assigned to schools some time ago. So would you promise us that you all would look into that and have that program be re-engaged? Because I know for a fact the Minister of Agriculture always speak about the good intentions and the values of eating healthy and stuff like that. So it's not that he's not directing and leading in that direction, but what are these sections within the ministry doing about it in terms of following up on his lead?
Okay, through you, Chair. Well, that was a lot that was said, but some of it was really encouraging because just from a ministry standpoint, what we've realized is a lot of times we're trying to make agriculture attractive. If you tell persons, somebody might say, oh, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a lawyer, but how many persons say I want to be farmers or I want to be interested in agriculture? And generally, we find that not many young people are interested in agriculture. And we have had even youth apprenticeship programs, and over time, the numbers have decreased. And that is part of the challenge that we're having. So you're even indicating that we've had 4-H, we have 4-H, that there is interest in 4-H is really encouraging to us in the ministry. And as I said, this was a wake-up call, so it's something that we are really going to start working on. But I just want to say that over some time, we've generally found that, you know, agriculture and farming has generally not been of interest to many.
May I interject? The issue of what is, in parentheses, sexy to that demographic is all about marketing. And if you are marketing agriculture as agriculture of 25 years ago, as in any other sector, it's not going to be as attractive, because I know there was a program about 3 or 4 years ago where there was a campaign about using a lot of young farmers and what agriculture has done for their lives. And it was quite successful. When you go to University of the West Indies and their faculties open day, and you go to several of the schools who have taken it upon themselves to have agricultural planting day, you see how interested young people are. So I don't agree that it is not as attractive. It is not attractive because of the way it's being marketed or promoted to them. And I think that is the creativity that needs to come from the ministry in terms of how we attract a different demographic to planting food. And not only a different demographic, but to me, the country at large, the nation at large, in terms of plant a home garden and plant a backyard garden, or even if you're living in an apartment complex, plant a tomato box, so that there are ways to get people interested on a national level and certainly on the level of the school-age children in Trinidad and Tobago. And that, to me, is a challenge the ministry should have in working with other agencies, ensuring there are benefits across the board, not only in food production, but in health, in commerce, in the economy. So there are synergies and even up to primary, secondary, and tertiary level, because the tertiary level institutions, particularly UE, because of its history, has a big role to play. Food production is cocoa plantation, is chocolate manufacturing, is global money. But we're not emphasizing the value chain in these industries or sectors effectively enough.
Chair, I agree with all that you have. However, I agree with everything you said. It's just when we look at our farmers, it's an aging population. That's what we see. And we do agree we have to market it. In a particular way, it's become attractive. We are seeing some things. For instance, we are seeing some persons, younger persons, importing drones to look and utilize in agriculture. So like I said, it is encouraging. There may have been a sum, but then we're seeing a little increase. So I agree with what you're saying, and I'm saying it's on the pickup, it's on the rise.
And Vice Chair was asking what incentives are providing, and and when you look at what has happened in Brazil, for instance, and the approach taken with innovative farming, vertical farming, for instance, it is not always about huge land spaces, although some crops are amenable to that. But sometimes people are in a room with innovative PVC piping and they're doing vertical farming, and that's more appealing to a different type of demographic. What incentives are there now to encourage younger people? I know the ADB is there and it had some challenges, but what other incentives are there?
So we have the grant facility of up to $100,000 per person. We have free training in the ministry. We give seeds and plant seedlings at subsidized prices. And we have an agricultural incentive program where persons involved in agriculture can get literally rebate on the wheel tractors, motor vehicles, machinery and equipment, water, soil conservation, integrated pest management, post-harvest operation. We have a special incentive for youth in agriculture and agro-processing and so forth. So
and quickly, are you working, I know there were some gaps you identified earlier on, coming back to the original topic, and dovetailing the issue of healthy lifestyles and children in primary and secondary schools growing produce in the schools, so they have a first-hand feel for it as to what actually will go into their plates to help with their lifestyle and nutrition choices. Is that kind of synergy and dovetailing happening currently with the Ministry of Agriculture and the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Health?
Well, the 4-H program and the Clover teams were meant to be the gap. But as I said, we are relooking our programs to get it more, so that we get more impact.
So therefore, I had a last question for you on that topic. How many schools in this program at this point in time?
I can't say at this point in time. I have to provide that information.
Do you have anybody assigned in your ministry to oversee this particular program?
I think this program is overseen by the planning division.
Yes, Jay. If I can bring in the neglected Diabetes Association. I would like to get a sense of what role you see your association playing in addressing the issue of childhood obesity, whether you have made any efforts and encountered any challenges.
Again, through the chair, thank you for asking that question. The Diabetes Association has always extended an arm to reach out and collaborate with ministries and other NGOs. We've had a long history of collaborating with Ministry of Health and Ministry of Education, even Ministry of Sport and Ministry of Agriculture through our events and some of our initiatives. I just note that our capacity is limited simply because we are a volunteer organization, and half of the time that we have to spend is raising money. If it is it's a little bit easier for us to get the funds to do the work, then we'll be able to do a lot more work because, again, we have the volunteer capacity. We have been doing quite a lot for childhood obesity in the recent years because we have noticed the trend of increasing childhood obesity and increasing children with diabetes. The Diabetes Association for quite a long time have focused on adults with diabetes because, of course, diabetes was an old people disease probably 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Now, however, we're shifting our focus a little bit, and we're even increasing how we reach and how we get the messages out there. So using social media is one of the main platforms that we get messages out there, main platforms through which we advertise, recruit members, recruit volunteers, and also bring about advocacy. So in terms of schools, we have for quite some time started a Diabetes Awareness in Primary Schools program, DEEPS program, where we have started with Standard 3 students, and then we have rolled out a education type program which ended in a quiz. Further to that, we have planned a Compre DEEPS program, which is kind of version 2 of the DEEPS program, where we actually came up with the entire plan, budgeted everything. What the program entailed was training lay educators, which would be volunteers, retirees, retired nurses, retired teachers. And we had this plan to train these persons and then send these persons out into schools and educate children and parents and staff about diabetes prevention. The budgeted program was put forward to the Ministry of Health probably about 3 years ago, and nothing has come out of that. So that's one of the instances where the Diabetes Association has done the work, done the groundwork. We have assessed what needs to be done, but we reached out, we stretched out our hands and said, this is what we need to do, this is what we can do, we just need your help. And of course, some of these issues are echoed by other NGOs as well, in that we have the capacity to do the work, we have the volunteers, because that's the heart of the NGOs, but we need the assistance. So that's the limitation that we have had.
Can you provide us with that paper that you would have sent to Ministry of Health?
The paper is attached as an amendment. That's the complaint.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay, we're running out of time. Member Jennings-Smith. Vice Chair.
You know, many times we hear about NGOs, and NGOs are usually supported by funding, either government, locally, or internationally. Can you tell this committee what type of funding you have received over the past 3 years?
Well, we do receive a small government subvention, which is just enough to pay light bills.
Could you tell us the figure?
12,000
per month.
No, not 12,000 per month. Sorry, it's about 5,000 per month. About that, because it's 60,000 per annum. So about 5,000 per month, which is just enough to pay light bills, phone bills, and we have 2 staff, so to pay the secretary.
Have you received international funding over the past year?
We have not, simply because we have not reached out to international funders. However, we have had lots of events, and we have had significant amount of funding from corporate Trinidad. And that is really where the bulk of our funding comes from. We reach out, we plan initiatives, we have competitions, we have expositions, we have symposiums, and we reach out to corporate sponsors, and then they come and support us. And that's where the bulk of our funds come from.
Do you make that funding, which you receive, public afterwards through reports, annual reports?
Yeah. So every 2 years, we have our annual conventions where our reports are presented and are made public to available to the public.
So could you tell us what have been your budgeted costs for 2019?
What? Can you repeat that?
Could you advise this committee on your budgeted costs for 2019?
So we have not, simply because the organization has not been in a position where we have set out what we want to do in particular for 2019. We are right in the process of doing initiatives for 2019. Main initiative would have been what we want to plan for World Diabetes Month in November. Right now we are budgeting and putting those things together. So we have not, and we have not reached to the point where we could start at the beginning of a year and say this is all of the money that we need, simply because things are evolving and we keep adding to the story and we keep adding to what we want to do. So it's not as though we have a budget for the entire year, simply because we don't know what we're going to get. And it depends on how much we could beg, how much we could raise funds, how much corporate sponsors are going to feel sorry for us and give to us. So we can't really budget for the year simply because we don't know what we're going to get. If it is that we are receiving, what we could have budgeted, what we can budget for is a subvention from the Ministry of Health, which, as I said, goes towards paying our phone bill, paying our light bill, and paying a secretary. So that is the extent to which we could budget, simply because we don't know what is coming.
All right, we have one more question from Vice Chair, and then we're going to have closing comments.
To the Ministry of Sports, right, with regards to being proactive, we have been hearing that word a lot, during this JSC this morning. With the amount of recreational facilities, play parks, open spaces that have been floodlit by the Ministry of Public Utilities and TNTech over the last number of 5 years, as the case may be, right? I know I can speak for the East-West Corridor also. What plans, what objectives you all have in terms of making active lifestyle how it used to be long ago? Like I remember when I was a young man, coming in after school and running to the little play park next door that wasn't lit, but going there whole evening and just doing all kind of things, jumping, climbing, playing pitch, playing marbles and stuff. But we now have these facilities well lit. you know what I mean, exorbitant bills, right? Underutilized, probably except for, say, let's say Eddie Hart grounds in Tunapuna, in Tacarigua, right? What plans do we have? And we probably going outside of the youth obesity. We're just talking about in general. What plans we have for the youths? What plans we have for the elderly in terms of utilizing all these grounds throughout Trinidad and Tobago for some sporting activity to minimize crime, to minimize, you know what I mean, just the whole idea of having a healthier lifestyle and so on. A quick gist, you know, we probably only could provide it in writing, Mr. Chairman, because, you know what I mean, we could have a whole plan on that facility. What do we have? What could we see coming from the sporting facility to say that, listen, we're going to revive Burnley Sports Club. We're going to incentivize all these sports clubs and youth clubs in the areas. We're going to give you all a subvention of $10,000 a year to say, look, find the youths in the area, bring them back to running, jumping, things as the case may be. You know, what plans do we have? You could just give us a little gist and we could probably get it in writing, but I would like the public to know, well, look, you know what I mean? What's happening? You know what I mean? The recreational facilities in Eddie Hart facility, the equipment have now used this time. It's dilapidated, it's mashed up, it's rusted. You could tear up your track pants, you could get cut. No toilet facilities in order to utilize. Come on.
A quick synopsis of the plan.
Quick synopsis and provide it to us in writing, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. So the work plan for 2019 is structured in terms of the activities under youth development and sports. So I will ask the board directors to give a gist of their work plan.
Very quick work plan, please.
All right, where the sport division is concerned and the Ministry of Sport and Youth Affairs, as mentioned before, we are going to hire coaches, we're going to hire sport development officers that would look towards the utilization of these facilities and also maximizing participation at these facilities where those officers and coaches would be assigned. That's one. Two, we also have to look towards how it is we work with the clubs in communities. You would have mentioned incentivizing, which in itself is a bit difficult within the overall financial situation. However, that is one of the areas that we need to revisit. How do we at least provide some level of technical assistance towards clubs, community clubs in the area, in various communities, and give them the opportunities to be able to function in a more meaningful manner towards the benefit of sport participation or total participation in sport, as we say. Also, we need to work a little bit closer with our national governing bodies in terms of their development programs. One of the things that the national governing bodies have been able to do over the last couple years in collaboration with Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee is understanding how to develop long-term athlete development programs that would cater to both general sport participation as well as high performance and elite sport development. We need to really activate those programs and help to facilitate better how it is those programs are actually implemented. Those would be the main things that we would have planned.
All right, thank
Mr.
you.
Chairman, just one other thing. Like, for instance, we used to have these vocational camps during Easter vacation, during August vacation. You know what I mean? Up at the indoor facility, Eddie had grown.
Yeah.
All the different disciplines. And lunch were being provided and train were running around the park and so on and things. What has become of those things? I know we may be economically strapped.
But that's it.
But
that's
we still need to provide because we need to find avenues for those youths.
What we have done with the very restricted economic resources that we have is actually given grants to various organizations that are hosting such camps. So one example is a camp that would have been held at St. Anthony's College for various members of the public to be able to attend, that really and truly incidentally measured in on or zoned in on childhood obesity and youth obesity. So that camp would have run last year from July 9th to August 17th, I think it was, and we would have granted them $10,000 to be able to host that particular initiative. And that is what we have had to do right now with respect to any sort of vacation camps, because for us to be able to have them, we don't have the necessary financial resources to do so.
Thank you. What would be helpful is that if you could provide the question the Vice Chair asked in writing in terms of your work plan for the annual what initiatives you plan to engage more effectively particularly younger people in sporting activities throughout the country. Member Jennings, you had a request in writing? Yeah, I'll request in writing. Okay, fine.
Criterion used to select your committees and those action group committees you intend to do throughout the country. And I really want to stress that the rural areas, they really need additional help from the Ministry of Sports, because in those areas there's lack of sponsorship and companies who could help with social responsibilities. And I really wish that you could consider rural areas such as mine, like Sanu Grande, Toko, Matat, all those areas, because you have a lot of activities going on there with little support from the Ministry of Sport and Youth Affairs.
If I may, the main focus of the hiring of sport development officers is to look at supplying those officers to rural communities. Mm-hmm. But again, I mean, we have certain constraints that we are trying to work within.
Thank you. Can I just ask Mr. Hussain, Dr. Titus, Mr. Danu, and Mrs. Budusing to give us very succinct 60-second closing comments, please.
Chair, I want to reiterate the expression of thanks of the ministry for being invited to engage us in this important exercise. We recognize that it is not only the role of parents, but all those stakeholders that have a significant role in the development of children to play in this issue of preventing and managing childhood obesity. What we recognize is that we need to a greater extent, adopt the whole of government multi-sectoral approach that has been advocated during this meeting. And I think that is one of the major lessons that we learned through this exercise. I thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Ali Budusing.
In closing, Chair, I would like to say that parental involvement is a strong determinant for effective holistic development of our children and young people. And I want to urge parents to see the importance of being part of the decision-making collaboratively with the school, and now it is facilitated through the school-based management from the Ministry of Education. And you know, PTAs feel that they are just about fundraising, but there's so much more to do for the welfare of our children. And I'm glad I'm here because I'm hearing all the funds that Ministry of Sport and Youth Affairs, you know, they help NGOs, because last year we made connection with the NBA basketball players in Canada to come and do a program with, and we were looking at our secondary school. I want to pledge the NPTA's support to look at obesity and really make, you know, a change, a dent in it, so that we can have healthier children, a healthier nation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Titus.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to thank you for this opportunity for my colleague and I to be here today at this Joint Select Committee. As I indicated, being here has highlighted that the ministry itself has to review some of our operations and look towards dealing or more aggressively or putting forth more initiatives in terms of dealing with the issue of childhood obesity, and also working collaboratively with other organizations and institutions, because as has come out here, it is not a one-person issue or a one institution issue. It's a collaborative effort, and it will take a collaborative effort for us to even put a dent or actually address it. So we'll take this message back and see how, and aggressively try to make amends. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and Mr. Danu.
Thank you again, Chair and Committee, on behalf of the Diabetes Association of Trinidad and Tobago and the 200,000 people in Trinidad living with diabetes. Thanks for involving us in this conversation, and I hope that we would continue to be involved in the conversation as it goes along. The Diabetes Association will continue to pledge to work with people with diabetes and to prevent diabetes. We also didn't really touch on it today, but we also have submitted a policy for children living with diabetes in schools. And I hope that that will be something that we will look into, because we have quite a lot of children now with type 1 and type 2 diabetes in schools. We also want to look into other policies within the schools which involve water consumption, which involve free play in schools, physical play in schools. And those discussions, I think we need to expand upon, and I hope that the Diabetes Association can be a part of that, because we have those resources and we've done that work and we could contribute significantly. So again, thanks, and I hope that these talks go towards actual physical statistics where we could see the reduction in the increasing trend of childhood obesity. So thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here. In closing, I just want to say that very often NGOs and the public at large, there are challenges facing Trinidad and Tobago like any other jurisdiction. And people are not, or they are working in a siloed mentality, not realizing that the help you need or the support you need is just a phone call or a meeting away. And all it takes is a sense of passion and a proactive spirit to collaborate in the interest of the people of Trinidad and Tobago, who we all are charged with serving. And I don't think it's good enough to have to come before a committee to say we will take what we heard here to work more collaboratively together in the future. I think when you sit down in your meetings and you go back to your offices, you need to think of what can I do or what can we do, or who can we reach out to pool our resources in the interest of solving problems in a measurable way. It's great to get funding and put resources into communities, but if you're not measuring the effects it's having and you're not collaborating and exchanging data, we are, as we say in Trinidad and Tobago colloquially, spinning top in mud. And we're going to come back here in 6 months and have the same conversations. And people are suffering, people are getting sicker, and there are angles and opportunities for success if we are proactive and we work together and understand the mandate is not necessarily always to sit and do it by ourselves, but to collaborate in the interest of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. So on behalf of the committee and the Secretariat, I thank you all for coming and your contributions, and this meeting is now suspended.